of cases where concealed handgun permit holders have likely stopped mass public shootings. This is from crimeresearch.org. It was published May 27th, 2022. Last week, May 20th.
Hello and welcome to another episode of wjlive, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Joey Chester, manager of publishing operations at the Western Journal, and I'm joined by my great colleague Grant, and we're going to talk about guns and gun control today and the totally unhinged left right now. Thomas Massey, brought up, are Democrats being willfully ignorant, or are they being deceptive? And I am in the camp that Democrats are being deceptive. The stats are out there. They can learn them. They just don't want us to know about them. They totally want to be deceptive. So I want to play a clip for you guys that kind of is Massey giving a breakdown of cases where guns have been used to stop other people with guns, bad guys with guns. So can we get that clip?
My family got a phone call that would change our lives forever. I found out that he was shot.
2022, Charleston, West Virginia. Here, a man with an extensive criminal history started firing an AR-15 style firearm into a crowd. Fortunately, a woman who was legally carrying a gun was there to stop the attack. Portland, Oregon, February 19th, 2022. Homeowner allegedly confronted participants at a racial justice demonstration Saturday night before pulling out a handgun and shooting multiple people in the crowd, leaving one woman dead and several others injured. The shooting ended when a person with the group of demonstrators who is licensed to conceal carry a firearm fired back, striking the homeowner in the hip. Again, a good guy with a gun stops the shooting. Syracuse, New York, August 31st, 2021. The district attorney credited a property manager with saving the lives of several individuals after he pulled out a legally possessed 9mm handgun, the very gun that Joe Biden wants to ban, and fatally wounded a man who opened fire on a crowd outside a building. I could go on forever. I'm submitting this document. Hopefully my colleagues who sit here and keep saying that a good guy with a gun never stops a bad guy with a gun will read this document. Thank you, and I yield back.
So Grant, are Democrats ignorant, or are they being deceptive?
I think they're definitely being deceptive, and I think a point that Thomas Massey makes that I totally agree with is that these are only the cases that get through to the media that we hear about. There are probably so many more cases of a good guy stopping a bad guy using a legally possessed firearm, and we don't hear about them because the media doesn't want us to hear about them. And I think the reason for that is that it's a coordinated effort to not get this information out here because it doesn't help their narrative. I think the Democrats know darn well that a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun, and they know that if they go down that path of logic, they don't really have a good argument. So instead of trying to come up with an argument against this truth that a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun, instead they'd rather just not talk about it because they don't have a legitimate point to make that would rebut that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the left is being deceitful. I think it is totally a coordinated effort with the media to pass their gun control agenda. You talked about how there's plenty more cases that don't get reported by the media, and so I have a statistic I want to share with everyone. And it's estimated that guns are used 1.67 million times per year in self-defense to thwart crime. That's insane. 1.67 million times per year that a good guy with a gun uses it to stop a bad guy. I mean, these are potentially over 1 million lives saved because of guns. And the media is just so hyper-focused on any time a shooting happens, reporting on it, and immediately crying and screaming that we have to ban guns. And by the way, so often the left changes the definition of what a mass shooting is. So I think there was a case in Phoenix. We live in Phoenix. I think it was over the weekend. There were 8 or 9 people shot at 2 in the morning in a parking lot. And I'm pretty sure it was gang or something, related violence. It wasn't, it was, not like a targeted attack. And, they call that a mass shooting. I think there was 1 killed and 8 injured. Like, yeah, that's not really like a mass casualty event. It's not some deranged evil guy going into a school and killing children, but they want to lump that into the deranged school shooters. So I think the whole definition changing is interesting, when really I think the actual definition is 4 or more people shot and killed in an event. But also the issue with that, I think, is gang violence gets lumped into that, and they never want to talk about that. So they're just being totally deceitful.
Yeah, you'll never see the word gang violence in any of those headlines.
Oh, no.
If they just say mass shooting, then that helps it. That helps them in 2 ways, because they don't have to talk about gang violence and Democrat-run cities and how bad crime is in all of those cities, and they can make it seem as if it's a gun argument that, these mass shootings are happening, we need to be banning guns, when really, if they were honest, what people would be saying if they had the facts was, wow, we should really figure out what's going on with this gang crime and these high rates of crime in these Democrat cities, and we should be addressing these problems at the root. But instead they would just rather blame it on the guns, because that helps them in multiple ways to be dishonest about what these shootings are.
Yeah, it's the same thing in Texas. Like, instead of jumping to guns, they should have said, okay, well, why did this shooter not have a strong family growing up, and how did that contribute? How did that lead him down the path to this crime? How did he afford to buy the weapons, that were very expensive, and he was like a part-time burger flipper at Wendy's? And what contributed that? And also at the schools, how did police fail? How was school security a failure? Instead, it's whine and screaming about the guns. And so I have another clip I want to play for everyone. This woman's son was killed by an illegally obtained gun. So in a case where gun control failed, just like it does in every major city in America, every major blue city that has the strictest gun laws, it's a total absolute failure. So I think this mom, by the way, is a strong Second Amendment advocate, and she argues for gun-free zones being destroyed. So let's hear from her for a second.
In 2016, my family got a phone call that would change our lives forever. I found out that he was shot point blank in the head and killed while playing dominoes. My son's death was a result of a criminal with an evil heart and a justice system failing to hold him accountable for the laws he had already broken. You see, a convicted felon killed my son with an illegally obtained gun.
So you heard her. A convicted felon, so people who were criminals, killed her son with an illegally obtained gun. And we see this time and time again, and this is part of why I think the left is totally responsible for the gun violence issue that they say America has. You have like these Soros-backed DAs across America who let criminals out of jail, and then they go and they commit more crimes, and they buy guns off the street. They still get guns, then they commit crime time and time again.
Well, they have no issue lying about the guns and whether the laws would have stopped the guns. They're super quick to jump on whenever a mass shooting happens. You'll realize that if the gun was obtained legally, or if the person went to a gun store and they underwent a background check and they still got it, the left will report that immediately, because they'll say,
yeah, they love it.
The gun laws are not sufficient because this person shouldn't have been able to get a gun and he got one legally, so that's a problem. But they'll also lie about what their new policies would do. For example, as you can see from my shirt, I went to Virginia Tech. One of the worst shootings.
Oh, yeah.
It was the worst shooting at the time that occurred in 2007 at Virginia Tech. That guy used 2 handguns. He had 17 clips, and none of them had more than 10 bullets in them. So these new proposals, Biden wants to ban high-capacity magazines. He said they would stop shootings like that one at Virginia Tech. That's false.
It's totally a lie.
It wouldn't.
No.
It wouldn't do anything to stop that. And it just goes to show you that, these efforts that they're trying to make, they're just Band-Aids to try and patch over the real issue, which is that, there are criminals, there are deranged people, and we need to be able to look at the root of this problem and be able to address that instead of just taking the easy answer, which is we'll just ban guns. You could try to say if you ban every single gun, including handguns, maybe that would prevent it, but it wouldn't anyway because criminals would still find a way to get them. So it's just their logic is so flawed, and they only want to talk about their policies when they work, but not when they don't.
Yeah, I mean, time and time again. In fact, the statistic is that most gun violence in America is committed with a handgun. It is predominant. I think even most mass shootings are committed with a handgun, not an AR-15 or a shotgun. It's a handgun.
And when you say that, the left is like, oh, so you're just saying we should ban handguns. No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the issue is not the gun, and obviously any gun, any weapon, a knife, whatever, can all be used to commit crime, and criminals will use them. So no matter what gun you try to go after, there's going to be another weapon that people are going to use to commit crime.
Yeah, I think it was a story out of Norway, I think from last year, might have been even longer than that, where a guy used a bow and arrow to commit a mass shooting at a grocery store in Norway. He killed like 5 people and injured like 10 others. It just shows you, like, you know, a gun is just going to be substituted for a bow and arrow, a knife, like we saw at the Christmas massacre, the parade in Waukesha. That deranged man drove a truck through a crowd of people. But again, in that situation, they didn't blame the person for doing it. They blamed the truck. They said, you know, a truck drove itself through a crowd of people, not the person. They never want to talk about the people. It's the left. It's what they do with almost every issue. They so badly want something to point the finger at. So it's so easy to point at guns and say, those are bad, and flash them up on TV and make them look really scary, and point fingers at the NRA and the gun lobby and say that half of America is evil, you know, because they support guns. They don't actually want to get to the root cause of it. So I just want to go over quick a few cases recently where someone has stopped a shooting with a gun. There was a woman credited with stopping a mass shooting at an apartment complex in West Virginia. She had a gun. She stopped another person with a gun. Great. Here's one of my favorites. You know, think about your grandparents or your parents. Here's an elderly woman. Some intruder broke into her home, and she had a gun, and she fired a warning shot, which I think was great. The intruder did not stop, so she shot and killed him. Justified. You know, she could have died if the left had their way. She would have been left totally helpless and die. You know, the left wants families to die. Here's one. Detroit, one of the most dangerous cities in America. A Detroit homeowner shot and killed an armed suspect that pulled out a gun. He had to defend himself. This would be a scenario where the bad guy has the gun, but the good guy doesn't. And the good guy just gets shot and killed, and the left cheers. Another one, Second Amendment in action. A woman suspected stalker kicked in her front door. She shot him dead.
That was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that was very recent. And so what? We want people who are being stalked to have no way to defend themselves. Women in America, just, oh no, they shouldn't be able to defend themselves. I mean, that's why I even think the age to purchase a handgun should be 18, not 21. I think it's idiotic. You know, think about if a woman ends up being like, say, a single mom at a young age and she has no way to defend herself. She should be able to go buy a handgun and defend herself. It's ridiculous. Here's one from a few years ago. A pregnant woman used an AR-15 to drop an armed robber attacking her 11-year-old daughter, and her husband was also injured in this. In the left's world, this pregnant woman wouldn't be able to use an AR-15 to defend herself, and instead her and her whole family would just get to be slaughtered. That's fine to the left. So, I mean, those are just some recent cases. Like I said, it's just time and time again that we see this, and all the left wants to do is report on the cases when guns are used in the wrong way, because it's easy to be emotional about it, and no one obviously wants to see people dead. I just think they're being so dishonest, and their solutions are idiotic, like making gun manufacturers liable for gun crimes. That's insane. That would be, I'm trying to think about like what that would be comparable to.
Like, imagine if they did that to whatever car manufacturer it was in Waukesha. They would never do that.
Yeah, you're right. So I like think about a drunk driver. So a drunk driver, knowingly gets in a car, drinking, crashes. You're going to sue the automaker and say it was their fault for a crime that person decided to commit. It's idiotic. But really, and I think everyone can see right through this. That's just a ploy to basically destroy the gun manufacturers, put them out of business. Because think about all the lawsuits that would come and the millions or potentially billions of dollars in legal fees over this. They'd go out of business. Another Democrat wanted to put a 1,000% tax on AR-15s. Idiotic.
Taxes. Always the answer.
That will solve the evil in people's hearts. Taxes. And then raising the purchase age to 21, which I'm not sure how that has any impact. I mean,
well, it was actually hilarious when Biden was talking about this. I think it was in like his national television address that he did. And he said, we need to ban assault weapons, which is a stupid term that doesn't mean anything. And we also need to ban high capacity magazines. And then like a few minutes later, he said, if we can't do that, then we need to just, raise the age from 18 to 21. It's like he's just grasping at
straws. Yes, that's all they have.
If this one doesn't work, I guess we'll just go to plan B, which is raise the age, and then we'll just make up another plan after that if that one doesn't work. He's just like throwing darts at a wall with a blindfold on. It doesn't make any sense.
And it's always so vague, too. Like, assault weapon. Great. This, I could hit Grant right now with my computer, and that would be an assault weapon. It's dumb. High capacity. Who's determining what high capacity is? I mean, is 10 rounds high capacity? Is it 5? What's the number? They won't say, just high capacity. And the 18 to 21 thing I think is just so stupid. I mean, criminals are going to get guns anyways. So then, like I said, in scenarios where young people can't protect themselves, the criminals can. I mean, think about how much gang violence there is among young people in these cities. You're a young person. You should totally have the right to defend yourself. Nowhere in the Constitution, the Second Amendment, does it say, well, this amendment only applies to people once they turn 21. It doesn't say that. And I hate Biden's argument, too. Like, the Second Amendment has never been absolute. You couldn't own a cannon when the Second Amendment was ratified. That's such a lie. You actually could own a cannon.
People did. They were pirates who got cannons.
Yes.
We wrote a story about it.
You could protect yourself. And I mean, honestly, if you wanted to own a cannon today, I wouldn't really care. I mean, as long as you're not causing any trouble. But yeah, they don't want to get to the root cause. And I think an overarching issue with the whole gun thing is we have a Western culture now that celebrates mental illness. Men can become women. You can take your kids to drag shows, and it's all fine. And you're not allowed to talk about people when they have issues, or you're the problem. And so I think that this culture of mental illness has partially contributed, and the lack of God in the last few decades has really contributed to where we are today. And the left hates to talk about any of those things.
It's so twisted because the left pretends like they care about mental illness, and they have these mental illness awareness things that they do, and they tweet about it and they post it on social media, but they categorically do not care about mentally ill people, because they would rather just pretend like they're not mentally ill and they're totally normal, and they think that's the way to be loving. Like, guess what? That's not the way to be loving.
No,
that's how you end up having people either A, harming themselves, B, harming others. I mean, the left thinks they're being compassionate, or I don't know, again, if they're being dishonest or if they're just ignorant, but they claim they're being compassionate by accepting people. But there's a difference between like loving someone and accepting everything they do. You can love someone and still say like, hey, you have a problem here. You need to go address it because I love you. And you need to improve yourself. Mm-hmm. And I say this out of love. The left doesn't understand that concept.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is they don't understand like the biblical concept of love either, which that includes. I think you're totally right, Grant. The left says you can be and do whatever you want without consequence. If you commit a crime, well, we'll get rid of bail and tough sentences, and we'll let you back out on the street, and you can do it again and again and again. And then we have this great, scary-looking thing that we can blame all the problems on. And we can ignore all of the good law-abiding Americans. They hate law-abiding Americans. They prop up the criminals. So yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see where gun control goes in America. And Joe Biden, I mean, he is coming for your guns. I mean, he's like legitimately wants to come for your guns, and I think some Republicans are starting to move that way too. Well, that's not the only thing that Joe Biden wants you to do. Not only does Joe Biden want you to turn over your guns, Joe Biden also wants you to buy an electric car to deal with those horrible, almost $6 a gallon gas prices. He thinks, are you worried about gas? Just buy an electric car that you can't afford, and all your problems will go away. And I'm really convinced that they do not care about the gas crisis. They want this because it's beneficial for them, their energy policy, to say, oh yeah, now it's time to buy an electric car. Go do it. I mean, do you agree, Grant?
I think that they think that's true. I think that they see this gas crisis as a reason that they can push their alternative energy scam, which sounds great to them. I think it's going to be a rude awakening in November when they see most people don't have electric cars, and most people are going to the pump once or twice a week, and they're seeing what's happening. I really do think it's going to come back to bite them in the butt. But yeah, I think that they have a twisted idea that this is somehow good for them, but I don't think it is.
They are totally twisted. It's similar with guns. Like they want to feel good. They're ultimately social justice warriors, right? So they think, oh, we got to take away the guns, get them all to drive electric cars so we can feel good about ourselves. And, we'll still have armed security, and, we'll drive our gas-guzzling limousines that drive us around with bulletproof glass, and everything will be fine. So let's have a couple kind of funny stories I want to touch on with electric cars. There was a scenario where a journalist from the Wall Street Journal, she decided to take an electric car on a road trip. She said, I just want to experience what it would be like. So she took I think it was a Kia EV6, which is a hot new electric car, on this trip. And
I could have given her a rundown before she did that.
I know. I could have told her how this was going to go. Do you want to take a guess how it went?
I'm going to guess she had to stop a lot of times.
Yes. So she ended up spending more time charging than she did sleeping on the trip, because it turned out that there weren't a lot of fast chargers along the way. And so sometimes it would take like 8 hours to charge up the car, which is just absurd. At the gas station, you can fill up, go inside, grab something to drink, and come out and get back on the road and drive, 400 or 500 miles without having to stop again. But with this, she spent more time charging than sleeping. And at the end of it, she found the car so terrible that she said the smell of expensive gas never smelled so sweet. And I love that line so much. Grant, would you buy an electric car?
I wouldn't. I might buy a hybrid. I've talked about this with my friends.
Yeah.
I think a hybrid would be great because I would spend less money on gas, and I could plug in, but I wouldn't be fully reliable on electric, and I wouldn't have to wait in a 2-mile long line to charge if I didn't need to. I'd only have to get gas in the case that, all right, this is my only choice, and if I had another option, then I wouldn't get gas. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
But again, it's the left and the Biden administration being unable to roll out any sort of plan, and also being unable to take anything, like unable to compromise, really. It's never like, we want to move towards electric, but we're gonna do so gradually. It's always like, oh, we just gotta do it right now.
Force it.
And it's gotta be all electric
now.
and everything must be electric, and there must be no gas at all. There's no like nuance to it. And if they would just say like, oh, maybe we'll do some hybrids for a while, and then we'll like build up the infrastructure, and then we'll get some more electric cars, and then eventually when we're ready, we can have majority electric cars. That would be a fine plan, in my opinion, but they're incapable of doing that. It just has to be like right now, immediate, 100% change, and it will never work.
Yeah, they sound desperate and deranged when they talk about it. I remember the energy secretary, I think it was earlier this year, maybe it was late last year, actually, it might have been this long when gas prices first started to go up. She was on TV and someone asked her, are you going to do anything to solve gas prices? And she literally leaned back and started laughing about it. Do you remember that? Yes. Started laughing about it. And she drives an electric car, of course. And like yesterday, too, we saw a Democrat senator from Michigan she was in a hearing and she said, I was driving my electric car and I drove by those peasants paying $5 for gas. And she basically just said, like, I drove by and laughed at them. Like, this is what these people think of us.
It's got like real let them eat cake sort of vibes.
Big time.
It's again not going to be, I don't think, beneficial for them in the long term to be speaking like that.
No, and I think about, if you say you live in rural Arizona, rural Montana, you got an electric car. What are you going to do? Where are you going to charge at home? Plug it into the outlet, and 24 hours later you'll have a full charge. Oh, I hurt myself on the farm. I can't drive to the hospital because my electric car is not charged. But yeah, you're totally right about the instant transition. There's so many factors that they're refusing to acknowledge. Like there's the fact that lithium mining is expensive. The tires on electric cars wear way faster than gas cars. I think it's like 18 to 25,000 miles you go through a set, and they're way more expensive because they're also wide. It's because the batteries are so heavy in the electric car, the tires can't handle them like a normal gas-powered car. And those tires also pollute worse than tailpipes do on cars. Just FYI, there was a new study out about that, which I think is just hilarious. Tires on electric cars pollute worse than gas cars. That's just so funny to me. Then there's the power grid issue. Like, how are you going to support this with the power grid? Because they also want us to change to solar and wind energy. There's no way that wind and solar are going to handle all these charging stations that they want to build across America. There's
Wind
just no
and
way.
solar can't even handle what we have right now. So they're not going to be able to handle more. They can't even, if they were so good, we would have already had them to power what we already have. Now we're going to have them to power even more things that we're going to build. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and so you wrote the story, I think, too, about in California, there's 25% of electric car chargers didn't work.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
city, right?
They went, I can't remember what outlet it was, but some, very trustworthy outlet went and did in San Francisco, like the San Francisco Bay Area. It was 6 different counties, and they looked at every single electric charger that was listed. And yeah, like 1 in 4 of them just didn't work. Some of them, like the charging cord was too short to reach the port of the car, so it was just completely useless. Some of them, like the touchscreen wasn't working. It was just like so many
had that
issues.
problem with the gas pump.
And like maybe one time out of 10, you drive up and like one pump is closed, but you don't see like 1 in 4 pumps just being rendered useless all the time. I mean, that doesn't happen.
No, it's crazy. And that's in a far left city that, like, of all places, should totally have the infrastructure for electric cars. So they want to take that and apply it to the nation. And, of course, they don't want to think about anything like nuclear power, stuff like that. So I've actually got a video I want to show. It might have played already, but this is the CEO of General Motors. And she's bragging about how clean the new Chevy Bolt is. And she ends up admitting where the power for the charging station is coming from. It's very telling.
So what's charging the batteries right now? What's the source of
Well,
electricity?
here. It's coming from the building.
I mean, is it what's their mix of power?
Oh, actually, Lansing feeds the building.
What's that?
Lansing feeds power to the building. So I don't know.
They're
I bet you they're a bit of coal. Well, they're heavy on natural gas, aren't they?
right now the car's charging up.
As you can tell, she does not want to admit it. She's like, coal, natural gas. And there's a guy there at the end, too, that says like 95% of that grid is powered by coal. So you have this electric car that you had to have an open pit lithium mine. I don't know if you've ever seen a lithium mine, but they are not good for the environment.
Yeah, you think an oil rig is bad.
Oil is like this little drill in the ground that moves up and down in, the middle of the plains in North Dakota. And then you have these lithium mines that are, open pit, and they're down hundreds of feet, and you got polluted water and all kinds of stuff. And we got to get it from China and Russia. And so you do that. And then you build the car, you build the charging station, and then a coal-powered plant is powering the charging station. And then, on top of it, the electric car tires pollute worse than the tailpipes on the gas cars. It's like way worse for the environment from what I can tell. I just think it's hilarious that she had to admit this.
It seems like there's a lot more issues that you have to worry about than if you just drove a regular gas car.
Yeah. I just found that clip hilarious. You can tell so badly that she doesn't want to admit this problem. And like, I think it's fine if you want to drive an electric car. In fact, I think that's how the process should be. Like, if you want to drive an electric car, fine. The market should take care of it. You know, electric cars will get cheaper. The infrastructure will build out. But let's stop pretending that these things are great for the environment and, you know, they're going to save the world. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. You just sound like a deranged social justice warrior when you just latch yourself to electric cars and can't stop talking about them. Biden, by the way, doesn't own an electric car. He owns like a 65 Chevy Corvette or something. I'm sure that's great for the environment. And he flies around happily in Air Force One. And, you know, John Kerry has private jets. Even Elon Musk has a private jet that he flies around, and he owns an electric car. There's one more video. I think it's funny. This reporter drives a Tesla, and he went to go try to charge his Tesla at a charging station. And this is what he saw. I think we have that. Yes. Look at that line.
I like how it keeps getting longer. You're like, oh, that's like kind of long. That kind of sucks. And then it just keeps panning, and there's just more and more. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Like, who knows? Say it takes, I don't know, 30 minutes for each of those cars to charge up. How long is he going to be in that line?
It's such a disaster. And there's literally nothing you could do. Like, you have to stay there. Like, you can't. It's not like a gas station where, I can drive to the next gas station down the street. No, you're stuck. Like, you're at this one charger on the interstate, you know, in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, all right, well, I might be here for the next 8 hours. And
you have no choice.
No choice. And then, like, what if you're in Arizona? Say, you know, you're like in between Flagstaff and Page, which is like in the middle of nowhere. So it's 110 degrees out. What if your electric car battery dies and you got to wait for a charger? It's going to, suffocate and die in there?
You have no air conditioning. It's 110 degrees. You're just waiting for 30 cars to get through.
Just terrible. But this is the future that the Biden administration wants. They want to disarm us and say we'll be happy because of it. They want to say you're all going to drive electric cars that you can't afford, and you're going to be happy. And gas will go away, and eventually we'll all own nothing and be happy. That is not a good future, my friends. That's why you read the Western Journal, because we are reporting on all of these important issues, from electric cars to gun control legislation. We are on it. What we do here is not easy. It's not cheap, and big tech is always trying to silence us. They don't like us talking about topics like this. And so if you feel led to support us further, you can head to westernjournal.com/join. From there, you will see various options, various tiers to support the company. We're a small family-owned business. Grant and I are really passionate about what we do and bringing you guys the truth every day of the week. And we really appreciate your support. We are here now. This is a programming update. I don't know if it's been said, but we're here Mondays and Wednesdays right now at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Grant, thank you for joining me today. Thank you all so much for watching WJ Live, and we'll see you back here next week.